Hey guys, I want to welcome you again to the Three Circle Podcast. My name is Chris Bell, and I'm on the staff here at Three Circle Church, and it is my honor to host this podcast and also to have one of my dearest friends on the podcast today. This guy has been in my life and my family's life for a long, long time, and he was in Florida with us when we were church planting there. And we just got a whole lot of history and a whole lot of life together. He is the husband to one of our staff members, Brittany Hogan, and he is also an incredible businessman. He grew up in a pastor's home. We're going to get to some of that. So he's been around ministry a long time, but also just a very accomplished businessman and has done amazing things in the medical world on the business side of that. Also, he is an accomplished musician. So he's a songwriter, pianist. I mean, he's just one of those guys that's all around. But for me, he's also a brother, really knows how to be a friend, really knows how to be a person that you can walk through life with. Always an encouragement. So we are so glad to have my dear friend, Johnathan Hogan, on the podcast today.
Thanks, Pastor Chris. Appreciate you inviting me to be here.
Well, I didn't even know you were going to be here today, honestly. I think someone else somehow threw that on the schedule. No, we've been wanting to get you on here for a long time. This is your first time on the podcast.
It is.
Cannot believe that. Yeah. So really good to have you here. And so what I want to do is start by, kind of giving people a little bit of the background. And we'll get into the series. We're on this series, about the life of Jacob, which has been a lot of fun all summer. But you and I go back a long way, and I always try to remember, like, when I think the first time I met you, we had planted a church in a movie theater in Florida, Pensacola, Florida, and you had moved into town, and I think that you came to the church a few times, and then you ended up trying out for the band or playing keys or something, and it was there that you and I met for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of remember that moment.
Yeah, we immediately hit it off. I mean, we both were raised in pretty rural areas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, we were.
And had a lot of things
People
in common.
would not know that about, they know that about me because I talk about it so much,
right.
And I tell my story, but they wouldn't know that about you. But you grew up like really rural, hunting and shooting and eating wild game.
Yep.
So you and I connected really because we ate a lot of venison as kids.
That's right. Yes. And squirrel and
other things we won't even mention here,
exactly,
right? Because if you cook it right, almost anything
tastes like chicken.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so you also grew up in a pastor's home.
I did.
Yeah, which had its ups and downs.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. And so we connected in Pensacola there, and just like we both are also massive Michael W. Smith fans.
Yeah, absolutely. So the funny thing, the town I grew up in, Michael W. Smith grew up 30 minutes down the road.
He was in Canova, and you were in
a little town called Hurricane.
Hurricane.
So like if you say hurricane, you're not from there, right?
Got it.
Hurricane is
to be honest with you, I grew up with people that said hurricane. When they talked about a hurricane, it was hurricane.
Yeah, there you go.
Hurricane Frederick.
Yeah,
I remember
exactly.
Hurricane Frederick,
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're big, so we realized Michael W. Smith. We love music, and you and I just connected immediately because I think you and I share a love for life, kind of in the same vibe. We love great music. We love great clothes. We talk all that stuff and great experiences. I think you and I over the years have realized that we find the highest value not really in things, but in experiences and connections. And so, and then we went on a journey, right? Because we had church planted, and then we merged our church plant with one of the largest churches in Florida at the time. And I remember they flew me down to Miami, Nan and I, and Cooper was a little baby, and we couldn't leave him. So he was with us, and they kind of showed us the vision of what we could all do together. They were wanting to help us with what we were doing in Pensacola and wanted me to become a teaching pastor. And I just didn't know. I was wrestling with it, as I tend to do. And so the two guys I called that I wanted to know what you guys thought about it was you and our friend Nathan Castleberry.
Yeah.
We met at, what was that little taco place? Do you remember?
Taco Rock?
Yeah, I think it is. Taco Rock.
Yeah.
Little
on
hole
Highway
in the wall.
29 of
Highway
Pensacola.
29 of Pensacola. We met right there.
Yeah.
and you guys kind of gave me the push to go, man, this could be really cool. And it was. God did some amazing things over the next few years. So, we've got all that history. And then I remember when we came to Johnathan, I remember when Nan and I accepted the call to come here to what was Church on the Eastern Shore at that time. It was you and Brittany sitting with Nan that first day. We were moving to a new place, and there you guys were right next to her. So there's all those connections. But let's get to your journey, man. Tell us, your faith journey a little bit. Just kind of as a kid, you grew up in a pastor's home, but you had a point where you came to your own faith, right? You came to your own place with God. But I'm sure that was a journey. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was raised in the Methodist church, which is not to get into this, but very different than it was.
Sure. Well, it was
at that point.
John Wesleyan.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Your dad was preaching the word of God, and
yeah, absolutely, and very honestly, very similar to how church is at Three Circle now from a theological standpoint. Yeah. And I grew up in that environment, and as an elementary school kid, it's a really kind of interesting story. My dad's youth pastor. I was at a youth camp with my parents. My parents were helping out at the youth camp, and my dad's youth pastor actually led me to Christ.
Wow!
Around a bonfire, which is a really, really kind of a cool thing. And what was interesting about that whole process is that happened in elementary age. But I really didn't begin to grow in my relationship with Christ significantly until I had a student pastor.
Okay.
In my life, his name was Chris Skeens, and he was very influential. Freshman, sophomore, junior year, got me like on a worship team.
Oh wow!
And I was really involved in music.
Love music.
Yeah, I love music and all of that. And so it was, one of our favorite authors, Donald Miller, references this in one of his books. It was like there was all this stuff going on at high school. It was like a rushing river.
Yes.
And it was almost like Chris Skeens was standing on the bank of a really calm tributary to the side with a rope saying,
wow, what book did, that's such a great description. Would that be 1,000 miles in a million years?
Searching for God Knows.
Oh, yeah,
What.
yeah.
You remember that one? Yeah.
That is such a, because I had an incredible youth ministry experience, and my son Gabe has just graduated high school, and he's had that kind of experience here. What a great way to describe it. I don't remember ever reading that line, but as you said that, I thought, man, that's exactly what my student ministry experience was.
Yeah.
And so that was life-changing for you.
It was very, very impactful for me. I think part of it too is that, like, on one side, I was getting in some trouble at school. Mm-hmm. Some things were not going great. And on the other side, I had this guy that I really looked up to. Is about 6'5".
Wow.
And
short
really
guy,
tall.
Very short.
Yeah, and he played music.
You really did look up to him.
I literally looked up to him. And he played basketball. He played music. He was like the coolest guy to me, right? Okay. And he was like, man, you need to come hang out with us.
And he was a Christian.
And he was a very strong Christian. He was a youth pastor.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And so I meant to mention that. Yeah, he totally transformed my life just by being available.
And this was Chris?
Yeah, Chris.
Oh, he was 6'5".
Yeah.
The youth pastor.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. Okay, now I'm putting it together.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Well, I described it really poorly.
Okay, that's all right. Now I'm back on track.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that was a big deal for you, and then you ended up going to Marshall.
Yep. I did. Ended up going to Marshall, and it was a really interesting time. I think people are like, man, why? Because Marshall's a small school. The context of it that was really interesting is my freshman year at Marshall, we opened the season beating Clemson, and which was a big game for a small school.
You're a fan for life.
Life. And
was Pennington playing when you were in college?
Pennington was there, and a lot of people don't realize this. 30 minutes the other way down the highway from where I grew up, Randy Moss was going to high school.
Yeah.
And so
some say the greatest receiver of all time.
Right.
At least second. I think he's always number two.
Or Jerry Rice,
Jerry Rice,
right? Yeah. And so we remember watching him run track in high school.
Wow.
And so
he was just all around.
Yeah. So it would kind of be like the context would be, imagine if one of the greatest wide receivers of all the time was at Spanish Fort
Yeah.
got in some trouble and decided to go play football at South Alabama.
Okay, got it.
Everyone would want to be watching
Yeah,
that, right?
sure,
So,
sure. Wow.
yeah.
So cool. So you did the college thing, and then tell us a little bit about your journey and how you and Brittany, who is our children's director here at Three Circle Fairhope, how did you guys connect and meet? What's that story?
Yeah. So I went to school, got a business degree at Marshall,
Okay.
and the whole time I was working part-time in a church, assisting with the student ministry.
Wow.
Okay, so helping run the student ministry. I finished up with college and actually took a vocational student ministry job for 2 years in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
and went and did that. I'll never forget it. It was like I went and did this role and was making $26,000 a year and no benefits.
Oh,
Yeah, so it was really tough,
It is
right?
tough.
It was really tough, and so I did that for a couple years, and ended up entering into the business world in like industrial sales,
Okay.
business to business sales, but still at the same time I had this huge passion for ministry,
Okay.
right? And so was continuing to work doing student ministry work and things like that throughout that whole process. And the company I was working for ended up promoting me to a sales manager role where I was managing sales reps, and asked me to move to Pensacola, Florida.
Got it.
So moved to Pensacola from West Virginia. So first time really kind of leaving Appalachia.
Yeah.
Which it's interesting. It's kind of in the spotlight again with some of the stuff
Right.
that's going on in politics
Right.
and all that. But
what is it? Vance.
yeah,
the
hillbilly
VP,
elegy.
Hillbilly
So
Elegy.
yeah, and
But
so
you know that world.
I
very
know
well.
that world very well. So I left and got down here. Was down here a couple years. Went through some really rough life transitions
Right.
that you walk through
Yes.
with me. And at that point, through a small group at the church that you had just taken over the lead pastor role at, and
Yes.
it was at the time
Hope
Church.
Yeah.
It's a really small church, like 150 people
Right.
attending. And
Mhm.
through a small group, I met Brittany's sister,
Yes. Melanie.
Melanie. And Melanie was like, you got to be my sister. You guys
Wow.
would hit it off. So that's how we met.
That's how. And she was in Birmingham at the time.
She was in Birmingham teaching.
And basically, she chased you all the way down I-65 down to Pensacola
Yeah,
just
yeah.
to get near you, right? Is that the story?
You know, it was really interesting. The thing that was funny with it is she was doing it seems very timely now. She was doing a Facebook and social media fast
Really?
when I first met her. And it committed to 6 months of not being on, or 3 months of not being on social
Okay.
media.
Wow.
So when we met, we were emailing letters back and forth. That's how we met.
That's kind of cool.
It's just seeing the context of all the issues with social media now
Oh, Lord.
and people's addiction to it.
Oh, yeah, man.
And the fact that when I met her, she was like, yeah, I'm doing a fast from all social media. I was like, okay, this is the type of person I need to talk to.
Yeah,
right?
sure,
Like
man.
that's a good thing. So,
Yeah. And I remember I don't know, man, few times have I seen two people that I thought, my goodness, what a perfect, how God put you guys together.
Yeah.
And so you've been married, I had the honor of presiding over that ceremony, and you guys have been married now how long?
I should
15?
know this.
Is it
yeah,
15?
almost 15 years.
Right.
February 6th will
It's
be
crazy.
15 years. Yeah.
Okay, so here's some things, and Brittany's been on the podcast before, but you guys are, you have an awesome little boy, Ethan, who is now 8, 9?
He is 8. He'll be 9 August 10th.
Yeah, man, that goes fast. And you guys really work hard at it. You work hard. The thing I love about you that I wanted to get into a little bit, Johnathan, is I've watched your intentionality. You are very intentional about the spiritual leadership in your home, financial leadership. You and Brittany work hard at your marriage. So what I love is that you are fully engaged and that you're very intentional. Talk to me about because I think it would help, especially some of the dads, but even just parents out there. What are some of your values and practices, just a few of them that are just kind of non-negotiables for you, because you've got a lot of discipline in your life. What are some things that you go, here's some of the 3 or 4 things that we just don't allow to lapse. We are committed to these things.
Yeah. I mean, Brittany and I talk about all the time. We are a team. She and I are a team. We talk about things as a team. As the spiritual leader of our household, I am this principle actually came from a Craig Groeschel book.
Okay.
I like to give credit when I learn something.
Sure.
I don't want to
Sure.
steal.
Yeah.
Pre-decide to do the important things in life.
Okay.
Pre-decide. So whenever we see a trend of something that's going on that's negative,
Right.
we pre-decide in our household the important things that we're gonna double down on.
Okay. So you are you saying that you guys forecast a little bit? You go, I think I see where this is headed, and here's what we're going to do now.
Yeah. So
What's an example?
Yeah, great example of that, like that we're hitting on right now in society is Brittany and I are seeing just this, and we just kind of referenced it, this trend towards social media.
Yes.
And,
well, it's huge.
Yeah, and mental health issues related to it.
Totally.
So what we do, the pre-decision for us is digging in to a lot of material, reading a lot of books on what's going on with that.
Okay.
From people that we respect and trust.
Yeah, and you guys are both readers and learners.
Right. So
and the book that you and Brittany recommended to Nan and I the other day was, what was it called?
Yeah,
The Anxious Generation?
The Anxious Generation she just finished. And the one that I was talking to you about was Love People and Use Things.
Yes, I think I left. You had that, you brought it out to me. I think I left it on your porch. So,
yeah.
Okay, so and so you guys go ahead and have a plan.
We have a plan. We dig into that material, and then we sit down with Ethan and say, and we talk to Ethan about real things.
Yeah.
It's not like we're gonna cover stuff up or just say, "Oh, we're telling you to do this, and this is the reason why," or just because we said so.
Sure.
No, we're gonna sit down with them. We're gonna say, "Here's what we're gonna do, and here's why we're gonna do it."
I love it. I love that, man. Very, very cool. And so that's one of your things. You guys try to see where things are headed and go ahead and now make decisions.
Yeah.
You said you communicate. So why is that such a big deal? And everyone communicates to some level, but you're saying you and Brittany have like we're talking about stuff. Kind of flesh that out a little bit for us. Yeah,
we kind of see our time in our marriage. I've never talked about this in public, by the way, but this is cool. Yeah, we talked about it one-on-one, but we see our marriage and our relationships kind of, we look in three buckets.
Okay.
And those buckets are time with Ethan, she and I and Ethan together.
Okay.
She and I just one-on-one together.
All right.
And then she and I with friends.
Very cool.
Okay, so
Nan and I are in one of the buckets.
You guys are, that's exactly right.
I'm so honored.
So like last Saturday, you guys came over. We hung out by the pool and talked.
Yes.
And the reason why is because we had spent all this time in the bucket with she and I and Ethan together.
That's right. You had just taken a trip.
And so we just came off a family vacation. Like, we need some time with friends.
Love it.
Next weekend on Friday night, we're going to get away, just she and I.
Okay.
Because we're constantly
really
thinking
cool,
about
man.
how we
and you try to balance those out.
Yes.
Okay, that's really cool. So that's intentional, and I think one thing about you that I've always admired, and we make jokes about this a lot, that I love going on a trip with you because I feel like I'm always having to be on. I'm always thinking. I'm always planning. And when I go on a trip with you, dude, no one can plan a trip better than you. And so you just take that off the plate, and I just go, Johnathan, I will go where you tell me to go. And if I go to a town with you, I'm going to see the best of that town. And you just got it all planned out, and it's so fun. Thank you for that. So you're a planner, but it sounds like you don't compartmentalize that planning. It goes into the most important parts of your life. So that's really good.
I want to be the type of person that can learn from anyone at even any given time.
Okay.
Even if I don't necessarily agree with all the individual beliefs of that person.
Okay.
And so like, even like with going on a trip, okay. And I think it annoys some people sometimes. It's like, I remember.
Oh, it does not annoy me.
I can give you an example. One time you got annoyed, right?
Tell me when. I don't remember.
So we go to Florence, Alabama.
Okay.
And I'm like, we got to go see this famous architect built a house.
Oh
here.
yeah. Well, that's just because I didn't like the house.
You didn't like the house, and I want to stay there hours. But the point is, I'm not.
I forgot about that. So we went to the Billy Reed, who's this designer and guy we love, and we all went up there to see he calls it the Shindig.
Yeah,
it's really awesome. But you wanted to go see what's the guy's name?
So his name's Frank Lloyd Wright.
Frank Lloyd Wright, and there's one there, and I thought it was the ugliest house I'd ever seen in my life.
And I think but the point I'm making is like
I'm angry now that you wasted my time on that ugly house.
Whenever I go somewhere, I want to see it as diverse of things as.
But I'm on the same page with you on that. Yeah, I love that though, man. But what I love is that level of intentionality and planning you really put into even more important parts of your life,
right?
And so you don't just let it happen. And that's something I've always admired about you. And I think the Bible talks about iron sharpens iron,
right?
And that's an impact you've had on my life because I'm moving so fast. A lot of times I'll just kind of compartmentalize that. I'll plan really, really tightly on some things, and other things I'm like, it'll be fine. It'll work out. We'll let that happen naturally. And I have been inspired by you so many times to go, man, get on top of that and be more intentional. Because I think if there was a few words that I would describe you as, and people at our church that don't know you, they see you on stage playing keys on a regular basis, and you've done so much here, whether it's been in student ministry, leading small groups. You've just been all over the map with us, marriage stuff. But one of my big words with you would be that dude's intentional. If people ask me, who is Johnathan Hogan? I'd say one big thing that floats to the top is he is an intentional person. He is intentional about what he's doing in his life in almost every area. And I just love that. And another thing about you, bro, is you have a passion to share that with the next generation. My son went through a class of yours. Tell folks kind of one of those things that you're doing at the church where you bring a group of young people and teach them some, intentionality, right?
Yeah. So it's this has just kind of been an organic process of growing. It's been really cool. We have amazing student pastor and TC and Megan Brown and how they operate. And basically each year, the senior interns that get the internship,
right.
we do a fall and a spring semester with them. And I sit down with them basically an hour a week for about 8 to 10 sessions in the fall.
Okay.
8 to 10 sessions in the spring. The fall sessions are based around making wise scriptural decisions with money. Okay. The spring semester, we actually go through a curriculum, and Paul that helps us with audio production here.
Yes.
I looked over, he's got it on his desk right here as we took the.
He does over there. The listeners can't see, but Paul, of course, is sitting on his throne in front of the soundboard, and he's got it right there.
He's got the book that we go through in the spring semester called The 5 Choices of Extraordinary Productivity. And what I tell the students, the interns that go through this, is that the reason we tackle money second is because it's the most important topic right before they leave to go off to school. Is you can always make more money, but you can't give time back, right?
Yes.
So in the spring semester, we go through the importance of time management. But it's the things I've got back from these students that have went off to college,
right? And
they said, "Hey, I was ready to walk across campus and sign up for a credit card with a 27% interest rate because they're going to give me a free backpack."
Yeah.
But I didn't do it because I remembered what we talked about.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I don't think I have the discipline to be able to pay it off every month.
So good.
Yeah. So, isn't that cool? And so that's really come full circle. So it's become, I think we're on our 4th group that we put through this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So you really have a passion for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're in the series on Jacob, just to touch on that for a moment. And one of the things that we've seen is this guy, Jacob is running and running and running. And that's why we called the series On the Run. And boy, Jacob could have used a class like that to learn how to intentionally use his time. But what we do see in Jacob's life, Johnathan, is that we get to see his spiritual growth throughout his life. And it's a zigzag thing. It's an up and a down thing. Very human. I love the Bible just gives us this very human story. We see him, we're pretty sure we can see when he comes to God at Bethel, and his relationship with God now is not what God did with his granddad or his dad. Now it's his faith, and he really believes upon the Lord. But even then, it's just this long, process of failure and growth, and 2 steps back and 3 steps forward. But I think what we can see is that we all have a process, and so we all are in this process of God maturing us and changing us. So here's a question for you, Jonathan. In light of Jacob and in light of us watching him grow and all of that, what are 3 moments in your life where you feel like when you look back on it, 3 moments where you go, God used that, or during that season, it was like fertilizer for my maturity. I was a different person on the other side of that.
I was married before
Mhm.
and had a first wife that walked out on our marriage.
Mhm.
And you were sitting in the room when it happened.
Okay.
And I think
It was a tough day.
it was a tough day, and it was biblical abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
And I had accountability from someone else sitting there telling me that.
Yeah.
And when that occurred, that was a huge growth moment for me.
In the next 6-8 months, right?
Yes. And it sounds weird, but it was like thinking about Jacob. He was on the 7-7-6 plan, right? 7 years, another 7 years, and then in 6 years, right? And it's like
so true.
The 6 years at the end. I mean, 20 years, right? Before
20 total.
Before he gets back to, or God gives him the freedom to go back to the land of Canaan. But
yeah,
it took up to the 6 years where he really experienced that tremendous growth, right? And like, I needed that season of sitting in a big empty house by myself.
Mm.
And I could really, as hard as it is to think about 20 years like Jacob experienced,
right?
Those last 6, like, that's where the real growth happened.
Okay.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. And so you think you finally, kind of like Jacob, had, whenever he would get alone, finally God would work on him.
Yeah.
We're going to see this weekend the famous wrestling match where Jacob finally got alone and God shows up. And
right.
So I can't imagine, but you were sitting in that house and you can't get away from it. It's just you. You can't get away from you at that point.
I can't. And I was going to counseling. I had friendships in my life. I had a pastor in my life that was mentoring me. So it wasn't like I was going through it truly solo, but every night I needed that solitude to swallow in everything I've been through, to really digest that and to wrestle with that. Because I think what we live in just a generation of instant gratification. And there have been a lot of, would have been real easy to run off to bars, to run off and meet someone else, to run off and do any number of crazy things.
Right. But
that solitude is what allowed me to heal.
Wow. That's incredible. So that was a big moment.
That was one. Yeah. So many life events have happened with you close to them.
Well, that's how it goes.
I think the second big one that was pretty life-changing for Brittany and I both was having Ethan.
Yes, sure.
And Brittany went into labor in your kitchen.
Yes.
So
we had I'll never forget. We had just ordered Danny's Fried Chicken in Fairhope, was still in business.
Rest in peace, Danny's.
Rest in peace, Danny's. But we had gotten this big thing of chicken and biscuits. We were really going to have a healthy night.
Yeah.
And I was sitting at the table, and Cooper was a little boy then, and he and I had just fixed our plates of chicken and gravy and biscuits and mashed potatoes, and Brittany goes into labor. Standing in the kitchen, and we knew immediately what was going on. Of course, Cooper had no idea what was going on, and then that began, the whole process of, Nan, my wife's helping her, and you're running to get stuff. It got crazy, and when everybody left the house, I turned back and I looked, and Cooper's sitting at the table. I'll never forget. And he looked at me and he said, "What's going on?" I said, "Miss Brittany just went into labor." He looks at me and he goes, "Can I have her chicken?" That's great. Can I have her plate?
That's great.
So he was very concerned.
I can tell.
Yeah.
But the thing that occurred with that is really forced us to be selfless, and really forced even talk about intentionality.
Oh yeah.
For me, of leading the household, making sure we're modeling to Ethan the type of marriage that we have.
Man, I love it.
And so that just kind of, I guess, opened my eyes even more to intentionality. And
fatherhood's a game changer. It's for those who get the honor of being a dad, it is a life-changing thing. It is fertilizer, man. It keeps and has kept my feet on the ground in the best of ways. The best thing in the world for me is because I don't think any of us are made to be worshiped in any way. It's not good for our souls. And so if I preach and hear 50 people after a service, best thing I've ever heard, changed my life, all that, I'm grateful for that. But the best medicine in the world for me, and it happens all the time, is when I get in that car and I head home, I'm just dad. They're not impressed. They love me, but they're like, hey, where are we going to lunch? You know what I mean? Hey, Dad, can you pick up the meatball subs from Subway? Best thing in the world to go home to my kids who just want me to be dad. And that has just been a blessing. I think fatherhood is one of the great growth, great accountability, great maturity tools God's ever had in my life. And it sounds like that's true for you as well.
Very much so. I think we've drafted this false narrative of what masculinity is,
Mm-hmm.
and said it's how well you can shoot a gun, and
Right.
how good of a coach you are at the ball field, and all these things. And reality is,
And those things aren't bad things, but they're not
No.
the only things.
they're not the most important things.
No.
And I think for me, it's like I think about this all the time. It's like, what's my relationship with Ethan and Brittany going to look like 30, 40 years from now?
Yeah. Right.
And how close is that relationship going to be? And is it going to be trusting? And
Mm-hmm.
is it going to be loving? And it's like, I have a friend that's a counselor that tells me all the time, like, you need to, when you mess up, apologize to your kid.
Yeah.
And that's so hard sometimes for us as parents to do.
Totally.
But I think it really exudes humility, and you show me a good dad, I'll show you a dad that's willing to fall on the sword and admit when they're wrong.
Mm-hmm. Some of the most powerful moments in my life has been when I've repented to my family.
Yes.
When I blew my stack, or what I mean, when I let my emotions get out of hand or whatever, because I have to own it. I have to own the fact that I'm the thermostat for the family in so many ways. And so I've had to look at my family and go, I'm sorry. That was me. I was not in a good place or not in a good mood or whatever. And I hope my kids remember that I was willing to look at them and say, that was me. I blew that. That was my bad, So I love that. So so a really tough time in your life that you would never want to go through again was a growth time, fertilizer. And of course, then, you end up marrying Brittany, and it's just been an unbelievable story and marriage story. And then being a dad just set you on fire for your growth and all that good stuff. So tell us this. I always like to ask everyone this, because when you look at Jacob's life, I think that there was a lack of consistency, Johnathan, in Jacob's life, which is why I think his spiritual growth was sporadic at best, because he just wasn't consistent. But I know, just knowing you, there's a consistency to you. Tell us some of your spiritual disciplines. Just what does daily walking with God look like for you?
Yeah, for me, I'm in the Word every day.
Okay.
I mean, when I say I'm in the Word every day, I'm very disciplined with that. I do not miss that. I don't care if it's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I haven't had my time with God yet. I want to get up out of bed and go do that.
Got it.
So I'm very disciplined with that. The other thing, and Chris, is a principle you taught years and years ago, was the reading wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Reading different topics. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm consistently getting into some theologically rich books.
Oh, good.
And things like that.
Great.
Probably, I'm not at the level of probably some of your church staff members, but probably 4 to 5 books a year.
Oh, cool. Theological books.
Yeah, theological
Fantastic.
books. Yeah.
Yeah, and just talking about that reading wheel, and I don't use that analogy much anymore. I used to use it a lot. I need to pull it back out, but it was just for me. I think that God's given us a brain on purpose. We should use it, and I'm a big proponent, as you know, of reading, and you are as well. But I like to vary my reading, read in different subject areas, and it just, number one, it makes you an interesting person to talk to, Yeah. But I always find that my sermon illustrations, etc., come from reading more widely. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I love that discipline. So, but every day you're going to get in the Word. Now, do you do a devotional, or are you just doing a Bible reading plan?
Yeah, so I do different things. So
Okay.
I do I have a 365-day devotion I've done
Okay.
before. Sometimes a very entry level thing that I continue to come back to, and one of our trustees here that I'm good friends with, Brett Vandermeeden, does
Yeah.
this too. We both read a proverb a day,
Oh
every
yeah.
day.
When I was in high school, a guy came and spoke at our youth group that recommended that there's a
Yeah.
proverb that coincides with every day of the month.
Yep.
And that's different times of my life. I've held on to that discipline.
Yeah, and it's like it kind of comes and goes,
So practical.
but it is so practical,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And then a lot of times I'll get into reading about heroes of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go through and I'll do a deep dive on a hero of the Bible and spend a
Oh,
lot of
cool.
time digging
Love
into that. Theologically, some of the favorite authors I like to read. Craig Rochelle, I
Mm-hmm.
read a lot of stuff from him. You and I are both big fans of Erwin McManus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I read a lot from Erwin. So, and try to be diverse with that, with
Sure.
people that maybe I don't always necessarily
Right.
agree with everything they say.
Yeah.
So,
You kind of eat the meat, spit out the bones, so to speak, and learn. You can just keep learning, right?
we live in such a polarized society. I think
Yeah.
it's important that we're able to be nuanced
Mm-hmm.
and
Thoughtful.
extract the good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. Very few times do I read a book that I'm like, I agree with everything in there,
Right. Right.
But I do think reading widely has helped me, for me, just helps me be a better communicator, that I have, some exposure, I guess, to things that, for instance, if I just live my life in a very tight little theological bubble, which a ton of my work is theological, obviously, but if it's okay, don't worry about if you hear the beeping, it's Johnathan's computer because he's a busy man, right? But for me, when I read more widely, it helps me connect with the people in the seats because they're dealing, if I read a business book, well, I understand what the business men and women in my church are dealing with, like you. And it just is so, I have just found it to be such a blessing in my life, the blessing of reading. And I'll tell you what, Johnathan, I don't know where you are on this. I'm getting away from digital books because of the distraction. There is something about a tactile piece of paper and I can see that page turning in my hand. I'm going back to holding a book in my hand. Where are you on that?
So that's interesting. So sometimes I like to listen to books. It depends on what it is.
My wife is that way.
Yeah. So memoirs,
You like to
I
listen?
want to hear the author.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. But some things I want to read. And if I really love it, I'll do both.
Wow. Okay.
And then I'll give a copy, like the
experience.
copy I gave to you the other day,
Yes.
we were talking about earlier. It's like if it's something I've really gotten a lot out of, I want to get a copy. I want to hand it to a friend and say,
Oh, cool.
you've got to look at this.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to ask you a few questions. It was
Yeah.
awesome to have you on the podcast, so, as I thought it would be. So interesting. Love the deep dive. We're going to have you back on for round 2. Don't you think, Paul? We need Johnathan back for round 2, at least. Okay, but I'm going to ask you a few questions. I want you to just hit me with your answer.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. You are, let's say it is 20 years to the future. Ethan is your son, is out of the house, maybe getting ready to get married. Who knows? May have a kid then, because that would make him almost 30.
Yeah.
So, what would you want Ethan to look back? What's the number one thing you want him, if someone was to say to him wherever he's living, and they go, "Hey, tell me about your dad. What kind of dad did you have?" What do you want his first answer to be?
My dad loved Jesus. My dad loved the bride of Christ. And my dad loved my mom.
Oh man, that's a great answer. That's a good answer, man. Okay. If you had to choose between a weekend, so we're going to go serious and then fun.
And then fun.
Yeah. If you had to choose a weekend in the mountains, because I'm going to make this so
Yeah.
hard for you because I know you, snow skiing in the mountains, or a weekend of hanging out at the beach with a pontoon boat and all that. So beaching it or snowy, cold skiing, what's it going to be?
Mountains, for
I knew
sure.
it. I knew it because you're an accomplished skier, right?
Well, I love spending time in creation. It's one of
Yeah.
my favorite things to do.
You like to be cold.
But yeah, I really like
I don't like to be cold.
Love being in the snow, love being
Yeah.
in the mountains.
Yeah. And I've not skied with you, but I hear that you're an amazing snow skiing
Well, no,
machine.
there are multiple people in this church that are way better skiers than me. So.
Yeah. Our friend Keith Glines would like to believe he is, but you can smoke him.
No, I don't know anymore.
Really?
And our other friend David Thomason.
He's a really good skier, right?
Oh, he's the best.
Okay, last question. So if you had to boil it down to your favorite book that you've read in the past 5 years, the one that jumps out.
Probably Mind Shift by Erwin McManus.
That one was a big one for you.
That one was a big one for me because I didn't like a couple of his books before that. I was not crazy about, but this latest one that he did, Mind Shift, was pretty impactful.
Okay.
I'll give you one more, and it's like I hesitate even saying this because I don't like a lot of the things he does, but we're talking about being nuanced, right? Actually, the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey.
Okay.
I continue to come back to that.
Yeah.
Don't agree with everything, but it's the principles are very sound.
The principles are sound. Yeah. Man, that's awesome. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. Johnathan, thank you for spending a little time. We know you're a busy guy. We will definitely get around to with you. But thank you for your contribution here at Three Circle and being a part of the life of this church, a huge part of it. Thank you for modeling, being a dad, being a husband, and being intentional. You've definitely had that impact on my life, so we appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the leadership of the church and all that you do. And Paul, thank you, and it's been a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, don't forget, the weekend starts on Thursdays here at Three Circle Church. We will continue marching through the life of Jacob. Got several more weeks of that before school starts and fall kicks in. A lot of good things happening, so we hope that you'll find a campus near you to be a part of. And if there's not a campus near you, you can always jump online and check us out. But we do hope that you would find a Bible preaching, gospel believing local church, because we think there is so much life there. And so we hope this has encouraged you somehow, and we hope that you'll join us again the next time right here at the Three Circle Podcast.